Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to rank the Coen brothers movies. This was a recommendation from a viewer, and I was really excited to do this because I love ranking things, and the reason probably why I haven't done this yet is because I haven't seen all of their films. I haven't seen, I don't know, I think five or six maybe. And so I don't really feel comfortable ranking things without having read or watched all of them. That's why with Goosebumps, I haven't done any ranking of Goosebumps books yet. I've only done the Slappy World books. However, I was kind of excited to do this again, so this is just what I've seen so far. The Coen brothers, they're some of my favorite filmmakers. I mean, I think that they're pretty much I look at this list at least of the movies that I've seen, and I feel like, 8 out of 9 of them I would watch, or no, actually probably 7 out of 9 of them I would watch again. And that's a good record. You don't find that a lot. There's always but again, there's movies I haven't seen of theirs. So, yeah. Number 9, the worst movie that I've seen of the Coen brothers is The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. This was a Netflix movie that came out a few years ago. And it was kind of an anthology thing that took place back in the Old West, the Western times. And I love Westerns. I love anthologies when they're good. And this movie just sucks. It starts off with this annoying, isn't it like a 30-minute long sequence where that one guy sings and shit, and it is the worst. The stories are predictable and depressing. I could not even finish this movie. I stopped after the first 2 stories because I just hated it so much. I thought, wow, this is really, really bad, even for the Coen brothers. Number 8 is A Serious Man. This movie was kind of unfortunate because you got Michael Stuhlbarg, and he's a really good actor. I think he's kind of underrated. And he stars in this movie, but unfortunately, the story itself is not very good. It's kind of frustrating. My favorite part of it is the opening scene, which takes place back in the olden times. And it's this really, really... It's probably one of the best opening scenes that I've ever seen to a movie. And for some reason, everything after that just goes downhill. It's all about this professor who has marriage problems and stuff. It's just not very good. It could have been so much better. And I would also like to throw out there, I have not seen the full movie of Burn After Reading. That's another movie that I tried watching and I just couldn't get into it. So I will definitely have to get back on that. So this is kind of number, I don't know, 8.5 or something. I don't know. I don't know what I just did there either. Next up, number 7 is True Grit. This is a really good remake. I was a kid when I saw this movie. And I say that because I had a huge crush on Haley Steinfeld, the main actress in this movie. I would watch this movie over and over and over again. And I was hardcore crushing on her. And so I really like this movie for that reason alone. But now that I'm an adult... This movie it's kind of worn out its welcome. It's just kind of like a movie that's okay. It's not the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's kind of cliche. It's kind of been there, done that. The funny thing about the Coen brothers is that they were much more innovative in the 90s and the 2000s, because like True Grit felt like we're we're playing it safe. We're going back to how movies used to be made. But like if you look at movies like Blood Simple, No Country for Old Men, The Big Lebowski, Fargo, all those movies were so innovative and they were so ahead of their time, and they tried to do something new. And so True Grit, just kind of remaking an old movie, they didn't really do much besides make the main actress not as much of a whiner. I mean, I guess that's the only thing I get. I mean, I don't know. I haven't. The original, I could not finish. I started. I hate John Wayne. John Wayne is just a big fucking loser, and I just despise everything about him. So I couldn't finish that movie. Number 6 is No Country for Old Men. This is a movie that I would have loved it a lot more had it not have been for the ending. I love the movie a lot, and it was intense. The main villain, Anton Chigurh, one of the greatest movie villains of all time. Just every single time when he's on screen, it's like you're just glued to the screen. He's so entertaining, and yet he's so evil, and you just want to see what he does next. And you're just wondering, how is this main character going to get out of this? He's really gotten himself into something that nobody else in the world would want to get into. But then the movie really falls apart because they have this final showdown and they don't even show it. And it just feels so anticlimactic. And then you have this boring, stupid ending with Tommy Lee Jones, and he's like reading a newspaper and he's talking to his wife or something. Like, I have no idea what they were thinking there. It kind of just felt like they were trying to do what they did with Fargo, or at the end of that movie, the husband and wife are like watching TV together and talking. Like, I don't know, but like, I just didn't like that ending. I really couldn't get into it, and but I love the rest of the movie. Like, I would also watch the movie again sometime in the future. Yeah. Number 5 is Fargo. This is another movie that I kind of have a hard time getting into because it's a very mean-spirited, dark movie. It's one of those movies that you really have to be in the mood to watch because it there's a lot of like undertones, and like there's that one random part where the main policewoman, Marge, she meets this Asian guy at this restaurant, and he's been like stalking her ever since high school or something, and just really, really weird, uncomfortable, just random things that happen in this movie. It feels very real and just very brutal in a way where it's also like a cold movie. Like, it doesn't really have a lot of hope or a lot of positivity. Even the way the movie ends, it's kind of like a depressing ending because it's like, yeah, she caught those two guys, or at least one of them, and because the other one is being disposed of, and she caught that one guy, and it's like, so what? That's just one guy. She's gonna have to do a lot more work after this. She's gonna have to keep on solving crimes and catching people like this, and it's like, it definitely feels like a movie that could be made into a TV show, which is why I'm glad that they did make a TV show out of it, because it really could have gotten a sequel. Like, I know that they couldn't have some of the actors they had in the first, like, Steve Buscemi, he was a highlight of the movie, even though he was kind of annoying. But you still could have had, like, a series, like, I don't know, like, it's a dark movie. It's kind of like one of those days where it's really dark and cloudy outside, and, you eat food and you feel like, wow, this day is just, it's like a dark, miserable day. The food I'm eating is dark and miserable. Like, everything's just dark and miserable. Number 4 is Barton Fink. This is a movie that I really liked as a kid. As a teenager, I would watch this movie a lot. I would like to get these cookies from the store, and they were like these generic cookies. They were chocolate and vanilla with cream in the middle. Some kind of like knockoff Oreo. And I would eat a ton of those and watch this movie over and over and over again. It's a fun and interesting movie. It kind of has elements of The Shining, which is why I originally watched it. I really loved John Goodman's character because he was so likable, and then he turns out to be so evil. And that part at the end where it's like, it's just so weird, and it's just so like open-ended. The part where he has to get Barton out of the handcuffs, and even after all that Barton's done to him, he gets him out, and then he goes back to his room, and the hotel's just burning up, and it's just such a cool movie. I think the biggest issue with it, though, is the open-endedness. It's a very vague, artsy movie. It's sort of a statement on writing and art and what you create and everything. Like, I think a lot of what happens in the movie doesn't even happen in a literal sense. But I still really like the movie. I think one of my favorite parts, well, I love the whole movie, but one of my favorite parts is at the very end when he meets the girl who looked like she was in the painting in his room. And it was interesting that I watched that movie around that time because I had a very similar like experience to where I met this girl at this summer camp, and every day at lunch I would see her, and she would be sitting exactly like in this movie, and she'd sit like a couple of feet away from me, like she wanted to talk to me or something. And I would just stare at her, and then she would leave eventually and go play sports. And like, but that was so weird. It was like the movie had come to life. And it was like a really interesting and like artistic and cool thing. And yeah, I mean, I would also say too, I think that John Turturro is really underrated. He's a really good actor, and I love seeing him in movies. And also John Goodman, of course. Number 3 is Blood Simple. This is another really underrated movie. This was their first movie. And the way that they made this movie, I think they did something to where like they shot a trailer and then they showed the trailer to investors, and that's how they were able to get the money. But I really love this movie because it's also a dark movie, but it's so much better than Fargo. It's so much better than No Country for Old Men. I love the lighting and the artistic, like the colors, and the way that this is what they consider to be a neo-noir. And I love the idea of like a neo-noir type of movie. And it is a very simple story, but I think what really works about it is the character that Emmett Walsh plays. He's like a very interesting villainous character, and he feels like a character that you'd like to know a lot more about. And so when I reviewed this movie originally, I actually pitched a series. I said, you've done a Fargo series, you should do a Blood Simple series. And it could be all about the character of Emmett Walsh is like a young guy and like what he did, because like I don't know what his deal is. Like, he's a very strange and evil and mischievous character, and he's sort of like a character like Jimmy McGill, Saul, where you'd really like to know more about him and have him have his own show. So, yeah, this is a great movie. Out of all the Coen Brothers movies, this would be the second one that I would recommend, because I feel like when people talk about them, they don't really mention this movie very much. Number 2 is The Big Lebowski. I'm kind of biased towards this movie because bowling. I'm a big bowler. This is a movie that the first time I saw it, I didn't get it at all. I kind of hated it. I saw it when I was a teenager, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. But then as I got older, I watched it again, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then I watched it again and again and again, and all of a sudden, this movie's pretty good turned into this movie's really good. And there was a time in 2019, I got pretty sick, which is like a common occurrence for me sometimes. And I'm not kidding you when I say that I rewatched The Big Lebowski every single day for 2019. Every single day. That's how I would end the day, is by watching The Big Lebowski. And every single time I would look forward to the songs, the characters, the story. I mean, this is a really fantastic movie because it is a comedy. But again, it also has a lot of interesting things going on. It has a lot of interesting characters, and you wonder, what's going on with them? What's going on with them? It's such a great movie. And it was also such a great way to tell like a detective story, because a lot of the stuff in the movie is never really resolved. But the way that it's approached in such a fun and casual way to where you feel like you're solving this case along with him. And you know, because he's like an everyman, Jeffrey Lebowski. He's an everyman guy. He's just like you or me. And he's a really inspiring figure, too, because he just goes with the flow. And people have created, like, whole philosophies based off of him. And then you got John Goodman's character, who's just, like, the opposite. And he's, like, a hot-headed, like, confrontational, just, straight to killing, straight to beating people up. And like, I think one of my favorite parts is like when they're going to do the handoff and Welcome to the Jungle starts playing, and John Goodman says that he's gonna beat the information out of those bad guys. And it's just like, he's such an idiot. He just thinks that like everything is like Vietnam, and he's just it's just so amazing. And then Steve Buscemi's character, he's like one of the most underrated characters in Coen Brothers movies, in my opinion. He was a very likable character, too. And it was really sad that his character died. Now, number one, I know this is going to freak some people out, so I'm going to take another bite of my PB&J. Number one is Inside Llewyn Davis. This is a movie that is indescribably fantastic. It is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It is also, I will admit, this is also a very dark movie. It's all about this musician, and he's a real like underdog. He's got this girl who's now with someone else, and she's pregnant, and she wants to get an abortion because she's scared that it's the main characters. He doesn't really have a place that he lives. He just crashes on people's couches. His friend and the person whom he was in a band with actually committed suicide. And so, this character, it's like he's just stuck in this mindset and in this it basically feels like a cycle where he's just like going on the same old journey over and over and over again. He's never willing to change. He's never going to get any better or any worse, or maybe he will get worse, but like he's just always in this like kind of cycle. And the music in this movie is fantastic. I wish that I had seen this movie in theaters. I mean, this movie's got Adam Driver. It's got Justin Timberlake, John Goodman. It's got this other guy. This movie's phenomenal, though. It is one of the best movies ever. And I feel like it's such a niche movie, too. That's another thing that I think that the Coen brothers do really well. Is instead of like Tim Burton just makes Tim Burton movies. That's all that he does. He doesn't make westerns. He doesn't make romances. Well, he makes romances, but he doesn't make like different genres. It's always like everything feels like, oh, it's a Tim Burton movie. The Coen brothers, on the other hand, they go to all these different genres and all these different unique characters. And I don't think that this movie would have worked under any other filmmakers. And yeah, I really love this movie. I would highly recommend it. It is kind of depressing, but you know what? It is a perfect winter-fall movie, because the movie takes place in the winter. And so you might have a really good time with this movie, because it's also kind of like a comfort movie in a way, because of the music and everything. And so, yeah, I would love to see more movies like this, less movies like The Ballad of Buster Scruggs or Drive Away Dolls, which that movie was not on this list, and that's because only one of the Coens made it. And he should be glad that it is not on this list, because it would have been at the very bottom. Because that movie felt like a feminazi Big Lebowski, and it was written actually by one of the Coen brothers' wives, not the talented one. And sorry, and it just felt like this should have been made in the 90s, and it was like a Big Lebowski ripoff type thing, and it was not as good as it could have been, which was unfortunate, because I really love road trip movies, and that was like a road trip movie gone wrong. And it also had some new up and coming stars that I think deserved attention. So anyways, please like this video and comment, and also I should probably mention this, because Safi's probably not mentioned it in a couple of years. Safi was a secretary at a hotel, and she did not get to meet the Coen brothers, but she did have to do something for them, like she had to buy them flowers and things or something, because they were coming into town for some reason in Missouri. So she actually got close to meeting them, but she didn't get to meet them, unfortunately. So anyways, and then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest videos like this. And yeah, goodbye everybody, see you soon.